The worst phrase I've ever heard in my entire life. But yeah, the Twin Cities one does remind me a lot of that.
Absolutely. John, Jose Abreu.
Yes.
We're not sure who's running the Houston Astros at the moment.
It seems to be Jeff Bagwell and Craig Biggio. Maybe Derek Bell as well. Lance Berkman popping in. Morgan Ensberg just making some suggestions. Jeff Blum is actually running payroll numbers right now. He's crunching those numbers. Carlos Lee is in charge of scouting now.
Man, you are remembering some guys.
I am remembering some Astros.
Roy Oswalt, is he not?
Let's get Jeff Jenkins in here.
Jeff Jenkins. Now that is it. I mean, are we sure he wouldn't go Milwaukee if he was going to?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I know he was a Brewer for a long time, but he was on the Astros, right?
It's possible. I don't.
Oh wow, he actually was not. He was pretty much a lifetime Brewer.
Okay.
Oh wow. I'm just gonna pull up the 2002 Houston Astros just to pull out some more names. Richard Hidalgo.
Yep.
Daryl Ward.
Was Moises Alou over?
Of course, yeah. Moises Alou was on the Astros at some point.
Well, I'm saying at that time.
At that time, no.
Yeah.
Adam Everett, great defensive shortstop, former Red Sox prospect. Julio Lugo, R.I.P. The great pitching duo of Roy Oswalt and Wade Miller. Extreme 90s baseball card guy Dave Malicki. The wonderfully named Kirk Sarloos.
No recollection.
Yeah. What a time. Shane Reynolds, Tim Redding. Really getting into some 2000s Astros. Hipólito Picardo. Great name right there. Anyway, yes, I don't know who's making decisions in Houston either. I mean, aside from Jim Crane. Jim Crane is clearly the one who's putting his stamp on everything here now.
Who do you think, so Abreu signs, and I think we talked about it before it happened, where, with the first base spot, I think we agreed that, Houston actually probably made the most sense for Abreu.
Yeah, I think if Houston hadn't gotten Anthony Rizzo, if Houston had gotten Anthony Rizzo, I think, or better said, I think Rizzo was the only other guy on the market who really made sense for them. But yeah, Abreu makes perfect sense.
Do you like the years and the money?
I think so. I know that there's a risk, obviously, with a guy of Abreu's age, 35 years old, to give him a 3-year deal, but I don't think the money is terribly much. And I also think Abreu is one of those guys who, one, he's been super consistent. Two, I think he's a younger 35 than most guys at 35 because, when he was playing in Cuba, the seasons weren't as long. He didn't have that same major league grind on him. I don't necessarily know that it adds up to he's actually 32, but I think he's a little fresher than most 35-year-old players are. And honestly, I think it works anyway because the only other option for Houston otherwise was to turn back either to Trey Mancini or to Yuli Gurriel. And Gurriel is older and very clearly in decline. Mancini, I don't think has the same upside Abreu does. I think that's part of it. I think that's, if you're Houston and you're a team that's still built to win right now, which they very much are, then getting a guy like Abreu is worth it, even if the next 2 years are going to be a little on the shakier side. This is a team that I think a lot of people are assuming that, they figure out how to bring back or replace Justin Verlander in the rotation, and maybe even if they don't. This is a team a lot of people are going to pick to repeat as World Series champions, and with very good reason. It's an incredibly deep roster, and if you had to pick one major problem that team faced going to 2023, it was where's the offense at first base going to come from? And now they did it. So that's part of it too, is I don't really mind the years and the money because it addresses the single biggest weakness on the roster right now. And for the most part, that kind of means Houston can rest a little easier for the rest of the offseason, Again, they have to figure out what they want to do with Verlander, if they want to bring him back or if they want to replace him. But they have the space and money to do that. And aside from that, I think now the question becomes, okay, what do we look at in terms of, giving out money internally? Do we want to start trying to figure out, any kind of extensions with anybody?
Do we want to hire someone to actually run the front office?
Do we want to hire someone to run the actual team? But no, I think it makes perfect sense for Houston. I think there obviously is a little risk that Abreu has 1 foot over the edge of the cliff. His power was really down last year. But a lot of that seems to be just some either batted ball luck or just some of the dead ball was part of it. His StatCast expected numbers were better than what he produced. I think also there's maybe a little concern that he's never been that patient a hitter. He's always been a really aggressive guy, both early in the count and with 2 strikes. But at the same time, he did walk a little more last year. And again, the floor is still pretty high for him that I don't think we're really looking at like pure collapse. Maybe by year 3, we're a little more worried. But at the same time, I think Houston can afford to worry about Abreu being bad in 2025 if he, when they get there. I think at the very least for 2023, he should be an above average productive regular in that lineup. And I think that's really the thing that matters the most for them. If he struggles beyond that point, they'll figure something else out.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Who would you guess is his highest similarity score in Baseball Reference through age 35?
That is a really good question, and I do not have any idea. I would not even try to fathom a guess.
It's going to make so much sense when I say it out loud.
Okay, go for it.
Andres Galarraga.
Yeah, that makes sense. The big cat. That makes a ton of sense. And I think the other part, too, is I know that I think that if there's one thing that makes Houston not the ideal landing spot for Abreu, it's the fact that they have a regular DH in Yordan Alvarez, so Abreu is not going to, if it turns out by this time next year, he's, not really... Because, that is something to watch, too. Yuli Gurriel is a fantastic defensive first baseman. Jose Abreu is not. He's fine, but he's not nearly as good as Gurriel is. Is he going to be someone that Houston is going to want being a DH more often than not as he gets older? Well, that's going to be a little tricky if they have Alvarez still there, especially given that, Alvarez can play the outfield, but I don't think Houston wants him out there on the regular. So that, I think, is something else to watch out for. But otherwise, yeah, this is a dude who just all he has done in his major league career is hit. Just hit and hit and hit and hit. And I don't really see any reason why that's going to come to a stop, especially given how smart Houston is and how good they are about getting the most out of the players that they have on their roster.
I think it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Houston is one of the more fascinating situations in baseball. Just go read Jeff Passan's report. Good reporting on what that looks like on ESPN.com from a couple weeks ago. But I'm very interested to see what they end up doing because I'm weirdly pulling for Jim Crane to be player or GM/owner. I want this to happen. It's going to be hilarious, and I very much want this to be the case. That is something we don't get to see very often in Major League Baseball. Hasn't really been done since Steinbrenner. I want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, the downside is it turns into a real Ted Turner situation, but, we'll have to wait and see. Because, again, it's like we talked about when Click got let go, which is who is going to want to come and try to run this team with Jim Crane and Jeff Bagwell and basically any famous former Astro that Jim Crane likes constantly hovering over your shoulder and being like, well, I don't think you should do that.
Linehow or Capalella. That's it. It's like guys who are like, you're just not sure you're ever getting back in baseball.
The copy redemption tour with Houston would be the funniest possible thing aside from hiring Luhnow back. I want this to happen now so badly. It's not going to happen, in part because I think Copy did get the lifetime ban.
Yeah, I think so.
But still, whatever. Rob Manfred, if you're listening to this podcast, which I know you are every single week, reinstate Capalella so that he can be the Astros GM, because I want to watch the reaction to that online when that happens. If or not when, but if it were to happen, I'd love to see the young.